Welcome back to the hills. It's getting up in there in the season, and we're kind of winding down here in western North Carolina. So kind of wanted to take a little bit today and just talk to you guys about filming your hunts. So that's what we're going to do in today's video. Now, as I'm recording this, I only have about 500 followers, a little bit less than 500 followers on YouTube. So you might be thinking, well, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. In the sense of YouTube, you're correct. I'm not really going to be the guy, the guru, if you will, that's going to tell you how to necessarily make an impact in the YouTube world. But what I have done is I have filmed for a lot of people, friends, colleagues in the industry. I hate saying that word, but the hunting industry. So I do have some experience behind a camera, and I just kind of wanted to bring that aspect to you, because maybe you are someone who understands how YouTube works, how the algorithm works, but you kind of want to get into more of the, filming side of things, then this is going to be for you. So let's get to it. So one of the first things you need to ask yourself when you're filming is why you're filming, right? There's a couple of different avenues that we as hunters go down pretty consistently when we start thinking about the filming route. And those avenues are going to be for personal enjoyment or personal memory, right? I want to know what happens. I want to be able to recall what happened on the shot. If I'm thinking it's not a good shot, and I want to be able to, go back and look at that shot before I proceed to track the animal. Or maybe I just want to, a picture is not enough, right? Maybe I want to actually be able to go back and relive the moment and hear myself in that heavy breathing, and hear things shaking, and hear the arrow making impact with the animal, right? Like, those are typically the I don't really like using the word bottom end reasons of filming, but it's the more pure form of wanting to film, right? You're not doing it for any other thing other than yourself to bring enjoyment to you. And that's great, and I love that aspect of filming. And then there's the other side of filming, which is equally as great. I'm not trying to bash it. Obviously, I do it myself, but that's you're wanting to produce something for someone else, right? You're wanting to not necessarily make movie quality, cinema quality footage, but you're wanting to be able to present something and tell a story to someone else who maybe wasn't there in that moment, who didn't get that text message or that phone call, and you want to be able to build the story and present it to someone in a way that they can actually absorb it and understand it and almost feel like they're in that stand or in that ground blind with you, right? And like I said, that's the reason I film, is to bring you guys what I do here in the hills. So if that's you, we'll get into that here in just a moment. All right, so if you stuck with me this far, I've been pretty long-winded, but if you're one of the former filmers, right, you're wanting to film for yourself, the easiest, nothing's really affordable anymore, but the most affordable way that you can get into filming is this guy right here, your cell phone. So most of the newer cell phones, especially I'm going to speak on the Apple realm, the iPhone realm, simply because that's what I use. There's no sponsor affiliation or anything of that nature. It's just what I've used since, smartphones became a thing. So Samsung guys, you can beat me up down in the comments if you want to. That's what I go with. But the quality of the phone, the quality of the camera that is on modern day cell phones. So let's say from the iPhone 14 and up, it's almost as good as a quality, devoted filming camera, right? The biggest thing that it ever really lacks on is those low light situations. But the newest, the 16s and I believe 17s, I believe those are the two newest ones. Correct me if I'm wrong. Those are actually doing pretty good from what I'm seeing from, my friends, as far as that low light situation is concerned. Now, I will say, you know, there's only that you're only going to get one view if this is all you take, right? So if you're wanting to, you know, be able to get you and the animal, that becomes really challenging. You could, you know, potentially set it up in an over the shoulder position. If you're lucky enough to nail down exactly where that animal walks in from, great on you. But otherwise, you're typically going to be wanting this camera out in front of you or this phone out in front of you. So I would maybe look into getting another camera, but like I said, if you're just trying to relive that moment, that kill shot, you know, when that arrow impacts animal or when that bullet impacts animal, then a simple cell phone is going to do it for you. I mean, there's not really many limitations when it comes to that aspect of filming that you're going to run into with an iPhone, where you're going to need to spend the extra money to move into a more high-end camera, if you will. Now, if you are still in that boat where you're thinking, yes, a camera is going to work for me, but I maybe want to have that second angle. I want to be able to have an interview camera or an over-the-shoulder camera or a camera trained on me, the hunter, so I can get that reaction of me. A simple action camera, right? And this one right here was on Amazon for like 60-70 bucks. You've got your GoPros, you've got your DJIs, you've got whatever you want to go with, and I'll let you guys do the research on that end of what you prefer. But just something cheap like this guy right here, like I said, 50, maybe I think $70 at the most for everything, and I'm dropping it. That's the case, the mounts, the extra batteries. I think when it was all said and done, I had probably about $70 into this thing. And it doesn't take the greatest footage per se, but for something, you know, it's got that wide angle. I can mount it over my shoulder if I need to. It just lets me get another angle, so I'm not really necessarily worried on it being the highest quality footage, right? This isn't what I have trained on the deer or the bear or the turkey. This is what I have pointing at me, just so I can get that reaction of me, so I don't have to worry about reaching out there and focusing on them. So you don't have to, if you're going this route where it's just for you, you do not have to go an expensive route if you don't want to. Obviously you can if you do want to, but I'm just letting you know that there are cheap options for you to be able to get that secondary angle, or that POV angle, or whatever you want to label it as. All right, so if you've decided that, you know, hey, I don't necessarily want to make a professional production and that the cell phone route is going to be the way that you want to go, my biggest recommendation and what I would spend the absolute most money on, and it's not an outrageous amount of money, but it isn't, you know, it's not dimes and pennies. We're talking, you're going to spend a good chunk of money, is some way to stabilize the actual camera, your phone. So what I've got here is, this is the Lone Wolf pocket arm, with a painted arrow fluid head and a painted arrow magnet. And basically all I do with that is I attach, you know, the actual mount to the tree, and it comes out like so, moves around, everything you need, and then a fluid head, right? Fluid heads are pretty self-explanatory. If you've ever glassed, if you've ever took photos on a tripod or anything of that nature, you've probably messed with a fluid head, but you prefer a fluid head rather than anything stationary, because obviously we're talking about a living creature that moves, so you want to be able to get around to said creature. Now, on that fluid head, I mount this magnet from Painted Arrow, and it's pretty simple in the sense that I can just take it. Now, you do have to be kind of careful. What I discovered last year is it can be relatively noisy. So you want to take your time putting it on there, or just leave it mounted on there. But I like these magnets better than a clip, or, you know, the spring-loaded or the screw-down clips. I like those better because I don't know in 2025 many people that can resist the urge to be on this thing, whether you have to answer work emails or text messages, or you get bored and you start scrolling through TikTok or Snapchat or whatever it is that you like to play with on the socials. I like this because that animal comes in and I'm able to just put it on there. It's on my fluid head, you know, the magnet is mounted on my fluid head and I'm right there in the game, right? I also like it because I can get different angles. So if I wanted to, you know, switch between portrait or landscape, I'm able to do so pretty easily with the magnet attachment rather than an actual clamp attachment. Now with my action camera, I'll do a couple different mounts. I can actually mount it to the same style magnet system by putting it on a plate that just screws into here. And I have the same type of magnet on basically a big chip bag clip, and I can put it on, you know, the safety harness rope up above my shoulder, or a his strap, or anything that you can tie into the tree. A limb, I've put it on a limb before, and you can actually mount said GoPro or any action camera on it and then turn it to get whatever angle that you need to be able to get that over the shoulder shot, or you want it out in front of your face or anything of that nature. And a lot of this stuff, guys, you got to get creative on, right? Because every tree is going to be different, every setup's going to be different. You try to get things to be pretty consistent with how you set up. Forgive the cows back there. It's the rut for everybody right now, but nevertheless, things change, so that's why I like systems like this where you can adapt to the environment that you're in, if that makes sense. All right, so that's the basics for cell phone filming or for self-enjoyment filming. Not a whole lot really needs to go into it. You don't need to overthink it. Everything right there, you know, the phone, the mounts, the action camera, you're talking 5 or 6 extra pounds of gear at the absolute most. And that's if you take along spare batteries for your action camera. You set it up within a matter of a couple minutes and you can film everything, right? So even if you're not wanting to do, you know, any sort of high quality production, give that a shot. I mean, it's super helpful in the sense of, you know, if you think that you may have put a bad shot on the animal, and even you end up having to call, let's like say a tracker, whether it's a dog tracker or a drone tracker, whatever it may be, it gives them a lot of information as well. And it gives you information and it gives you memories. You have that forever if you so want it to remember your hunt by. So give that a shot. But without further ado, let's get into some higher production stuff. Okay, so you've been filming yourself for a little bit and you're thinking to yourself, hey, I really, really like this whole filming thing. Whether you're filming for someone else or you're self-filming, I kind of want to step the game up a little bit. Well, obviously, if you want to step the game up a little bit, you should probably think about getting a dedicated videoing camera. There's nothing worse than a low light situation where, like I was saying, those, you know, your iPhone or your Samsung or whatever just does not seem to shine, pun intended, in those low light situations. So you want to get something that's going to get you better quality as far as a sensor is concerned. Now, I'm not going to get into all the nerd stuff because I could make this long already video even longer, but you basically want to get a big sensor to bring in lots of light, right? A sensor is what's actually going to let that light in to the actual camera, which in turn translates into your colors. It turns into the actual, you know, you've seen some grainy footage before. That's typically because the light's getting below what that sensor is able to bring in. So you're looking for a big sensor. Now, you still don't have to necessarily blow loads of money to get high quality footage. For example, a handy cam. This guy right here, as you can see, it's been well loved. This is the Sony AX43A. It has, you know, it has the optical zoom on it. It has a pretty good mic as far as a stock mic is concerned, which we'll get to mics here in just a moment. You can get some pretty large batteries for them that last pretty long, and the biggest thing about it is it's point and shoot. Okay, so I'm going to point it at my target, whatever my target is. I'm going to hit record. Now it's recording, and literally all I have to do is zoom in and zoom out. The autofocus is there. I don't have to worry about my lighting, my ISO. I can literally just point the camera, like for example, I want to film these cattle over here. All I got to do is zoom in and zoom out. I don't have to worry about any focus or anything of that nature. So for simplicity as a deer hunter, especially self-filming, which I'll get to that here in a moment, this is going to be the ticket. You can get a remote that plugs into this guy. Some of them are Bluetooth, and you have all the controls on your thumb. So when you put it on your fluid head, the thumb clip goes on there and you're good to go. You can just move it around and do whatever you need to do. This one, I actually, because I've got this extended battery on there, I can basically use my which I'm not suggesting you do, but I can use my battery as my handle on my fluid head, and my thumb reaches right up there to the zoom lever, and I can do everything that I need to do with that. That does kind of put some stress on the battery connection, so your money, do it at your own discretion. But that is a Handycam model, right? Point and shoot. Okay. You can upgrade from this. You got the Sony ZV-E10, I think it's called. I might be mistaken on that. A lot of the Handycam stuff, though, is getting discontinued. They're stopping to make it because the market is more leaning towards mirrorless and DSLR, which we'll get to here in a moment. But regardless, you can upgrade. You can get all the way up to a big professional production shoulder mount rig if you want to. Wouldn't suggest taking that through the woods. That'd be pretty heavy load. But this right here, the A700, these guys right here are all you're going to need as a self-filmer when you're first getting into making that higher production. It does film in 4K, so it's got everything you need. Now, if you want to step up the game from that, and you maybe want to get more cinematic. That's a pretty heavy word that's thrown around a lot lately. I don't really necessarily like the word cinematic, but if you want that look, a more professional look, you could either, like I said, step up on that Handycam side, going to the X80, the X90, those levels of camcorders. You're going to have more options. You're going to have more sound options. You're going to have more video options. You're going to have more editing options. But you're basically stuck with the lens that you've got. So you're stuck with the zoom that you've got. You're stuck with the apertures that you got. Again, that's some nerdy stuff. If you want to get into that, feel free to ask questions down below and we can get into all the nerdy stuff. But basically, you're stuck with what the camera is capable of. You can't change anything. So you can move to a mirrorless camera. This here is the Sony ZV-E10. I'm going to brag on this camera more so than anything else, but I am going to hit on everything else. So most of your DSLRs and mirrorless cameras are designed more specifically for taking photos. They have a filming option, right? So their primary design is pictures with video as an option, and they take great video, not because of necessarily the body, right? So you have a body and a lens. They take the great video because of the fact that you can put different lenses on them. The lens is kind of where the money's at. The body is just the body. Now, that's pretty broad in a statement, though. Obviously, better bodies do perform better, and that goes back to, as I was saying at the very beginning, bigger sensors, more light coming in, things of that nature. You can get crop sensors, bunch of nerdy stuff. Again, let's not go into that, but for the most part, the lens is going to be the determining factor. Once you compare apples to apples, if the sensors are the same, it's the lens that's going to make or break the bank there, if that makes any sense. But the ZV-E10, so this is classified as a vlogging camera. So it's a mirrorless camera, but its primary purpose is video with pictures as the forethought. So the reason I like that, and one of the biggest downfalls of the mirrorless DSLR route, is that point and shoot aspect is gone. Okay, so with our camcorder, our handy cam here, our zoom is right here, or we hook it up to a remote and it auto focuses, right? With most DSLRs, like I've got a Canon Rebel T7i, the Nikons, in any DSLR, 99.9% of the time, all of your zoom function and focus function is on the lens, right? Because where it's our strong suit in the fact that the lens can be changed, it's also our weakness, because now every time I shoot, I have to be dual-handed, right? I got to control my zoom, I've got to control my focus. Well, the Sony ZV-E10, and one of the highest reasons I will recommend it, it is a power zoom. So I still have a zoom paddle right here on top. See if I can get that to focus. So I have a zoom paddle right there on top, and I can control my zoom with the push of a finger, rather than having to come down here and, you know, grab a lens and all that good fun stuff. You can also hook up a remote control, which does the same thing that a remote control would do for the camcorder. I've got a Bluetooth one for this, and I can control my zoom off the handle of my fluid head and basically one hand operate this thing. And that's more or less what I'm getting at. If you're going to go to the DSLR mirrorless route, understand that it's going to 99% of the time, unless you get something like a power zoom lens, it's going to be a two-hand operation. So if you're filming someone else, that's not a problem, right? If you are sitting there and you're behind the hunter and you're controlling the camera, easy peasy lemon squeezy, let's go. We can rock with that all day long, right? But if you're self-filming, that is where the modern DSLRs and mirrorless cameras tend to show their weaknesses, because you can, but it becomes a scramble. And in that heat of the moment, when that deer is coming in, I mean, if you just got done watching my Kentucky hunt not too long ago, it's already hard enough to self-film. Things happen. Like I got this guy hung up on a tree limb when the biggest deer of the year came walking in, right? Like I missed that shot with that. Now imagine if I had to pull it over with my bow and figure out how to manipulate my focus ring or my zoom ring and things of that nature. It becomes hectic, and although I'm an advocate, you have time in the deer woods, you don't have time in that moment, right? Like you have to be set up, ready to go, right? So keep that in mind if you're, deciding between a DSLR or a Handycam model, right? And then if you want my recommendation, this dude right here, this thing is awesome for what we do as outdoorsmen. Like I said, I've still got that one-handed operation. I still have the power of switching out lenses, and I get the best of both worlds, basically. I have my lens option, but I have my Handycam ease of operation option. Okay, so am I a little biased? Yes, I am. But if you want my suggestion as a main camera, this guy right here, that's the way to go. All right, so I said main camera, right? So that's going to mean that I want more than one camera, and that goes back to the same principle that we were talking about with the cell phone filming. You want to have if at all possible, if it's in your budget. Now remember, at the end of the day, you make the rules on this, okay? So anything that I say, if you don't like it, you can just completely tear up the idea and chuck it, right? You don't have to listen to anything that I suggest. At the end of the day, this is 100% your call. This is 100% your decision, and you get to make the choices, right? I don't pay your bills. I don't make your money. That's you. But if you want something that actually brings it to life, if you want that video just to pop and feel like you're there, you're in the moment, you're actually, you know, whoever's watching that video is sitting there in that tree with you or in that blind with you. You want something filming you, okay? To be able to see an animal out there is great. It's awesome. That's kind of the bread and butter, right? Which is why we call the bigger camera the main camera. But nevertheless, you still want to be able to tell the full story by showing you draw that bow, or like in my Kentucky video, you can kind of see where my camera's hung up on the limb. You can see me draw back. You get the bigger picture when every aspect is going on. And honestly, more cameras the better, right? So on any typical hunt, I'm usually going to take my main camera. I'm going to take my action camera, and that's usually going to be set into an advantageous position where it's you know, either in front of my face or over my shoulder. And then I actually take the camera that you guys are on right now. So this is the Sony ZV-E10, which is basically the little brother to my E10. And what it does is, and this is it's considered specifically a vlogging camera. Like, that is what it's designed for. It's designed for those shots that are in your face, whether I'm, you know, if you've seen me walking in, or if you've seen me sitting in my tree stand, or basically any interview, it's pretty much going to be on this camera right here. I would say that this camera is what I use. Even though that's called my main camera, this is the camera I use probably about 70% of the time. This is my, you know, my vlogging camera. This is what I talk to you guys on. This is actually the camera that I typically use for my over-the-shoulder shot, and I'll get to why here in just a moment. But this is the camera that is basically running all day long, is this one and my action camera. The big camera, the main camera, it's kind of funny that we call it the main camera because you're actually using it the least amount of time. I use mine for B-roll footage. Obviously, I use it for the kill shot, or if I really need to, you know, get some detailed good footage, that's going to be coming off of my main camera. But all my, you know, run-of-the-mill, plain Jane conversations, interviews, instructions like I'm doing right now, even my podcasts are filmed primarily on this camera rather than my main camera. So if you've got it in your budget, I would get something like that. The great part about the ZV-E10 is it's tiny. Even with my small rig cage on it, I can fold it up, fit it in my pocket, in a cargo pocket, maybe not necessarily my my normal, you know, streetwear, street jeans pocket, but into a cargo pocket, no problem. And I know it's always on me. I don't have to pull it out of my bag. It's just right there, and I can film anything I do need to film in that moment. Now, one of the biggest downfalls of the Sony ZV-E10 is it is a fixed lens. In other words, you can't swap out lenses. You basically get what you get, and the zoom is not that great. It will, if you put the digital zoom on, it will get a hunt done. I've actually recorded some turkey hunts off of this camera, I believe. But you're not really going to reach out past 100 yards and get to watch that animal walking in. And when you do zoom out to about 60, 70 yards, it tends to get a little bit grainy and a little bit blurry, which is why I typically use it as my interview camera, because it's a vlog camera. People seem to forget that these cameras are not designed for hunters, right? It's designed for videography. We are what we're deciding to video. So it wasn't designed specifically for any one purpose, but it is a vlog camera. So keep that in mind if you do want to go the Sony ZV-E10 route. I highly recommend it though. I love the quality of this camera, and when you spend some time with it and figure out what kind of settings that you like, it is an absolute rock star of a camera for my interviews and things in my second angle camera. So we've talked about a main camera, we've talked about our action camera, and we've talked about maybe even a third camera. You can continue adding action cameras on, as many as you want to, as many as you can afford. I don't necessarily think there's too many angles that you can film, as long as you're understanding that each camera has its own, you know, set of nuances and responsibilities that it's going to bring to you if you want to get it going. So if you're running multiple action cameras, I would suggest getting the same brand. That way you can set them all up on a remote. I believe just about all the companies have remotes for their action cameras now. If you're running multiple DSLRs, multiple handy cams, anything of that nature, understand that you, as the hunter, have to manage batteries. You have to actually turn the camera on, hit record. If it needs to be focused, if it needs to be zoomed, you have to do all that. So that can potentially actually take away from your hunt, or you can mess it up. And especially self-filming, there's so many things that can go wrong. If you don't believe me, just run back and watch the last couple hunts. It goes bad quickly when it comes to filming yourself. Now then, just like with a cell phone, we are still going to need something to keep it stable. There's nothing worse than having a couple $1,000s invested into your camera, and then you go back to watch the footage and everything is just shaking, because in that moment, right, our adrenaline's pumping, everything's going, we are excited, right? So you still need a mount, you still need an arm, but this time we kind of got to beef it up a little bit. Now, the pocket arm does work with my mirrorless camera and my handy cam, because they are both relatively light. It does get a little bit of wobble when I take it all the way out to the end of the arm. So that is why, for most of the time, I'm going to be using something like the 4th Era camera arm. Now, this is a 4th Arrow triple arm. And there's my beefier fluid head. It's not beefier, it just has a longer handle. It's the same size fluid head as I use for my cell phone. But the arm is much more secure, and the actual mounting method is much more secure also. It uses an actual ratchet strap. This thing is substantially heavier than my pocket arm, but when you're talking about a bigger camera, you want a bigger arm, or for the most part, heavier arms means more secure. Sometimes they're just heavy for no reason. Like that arm itself is not heavy, but the mounting plate is. It's much heavier, much more secure. And like I said, I'm actually using a ratchet rather than a cam system. Now for my POV camera, it's stationary. It doesn't move, so I can kind of cheap out on my arm a little bit, and that's what I do. I use the Painted Arrow micro arm, I think is what it's called. If it's not, someone feel free to correct me in the comments. But basically what I do is, depending on what side and what where I'm thinking the deer are coming from, I'll actually put my bow hook on one side or the other, like I said, depending on where I'm thinking the deer are coming from. And this I clip straight onto my bow hook, and that is what gives me my over the shoulder and my interview side camera, and I can just adjust to whatever angle I need to make it work for whatever setup I'm in. Because remember, I am very mobile. I am typically never in the same tree twice. If you are in the same tree, you can basically set everything up. I wouldn't suggest leaving any of your camera gear in the woods, because when rust occurs, especially on your camera arm, when that rust occurs, you start getting squeaks while you're trying to move the camera around. So I would suggest you bring it out every single night with you, but to each their own. I can't tell you what to do. And then again, with my action camera, I set it on this guy right here, anywhere, depending on where I am in the tree and what that setup is consisting of. I'll change from setup to setup. So that's basically how I am running my cameras, the cameras that I am running, and the cameras that I would suggest to you. So that's kind of the biggest reason I wanted to make this video, is I've been having a lot of people ask me, what camera setups that I use. That's what I use, and that's what I would recommend. It's a bulletproof camera setup. You just gotta, the biggest thing with any camera setup that you use is make sure you practice with it. That's where I messed up in Kentucky. I kind of got complacent with where I was in my filming, and I didn't check to make sure everything was going to clear. I didn't check to make sure the balance point was good on my lens. The lens tipped, got hung up on the limb, and when the moment arose that I needed to get everything over to the other side of the tree in a quick manner, I couldn't do it because I was not practicing with my equipment. So more important than anything that you buy is the time that you spend with it and the practice that you spend on it. Now then, moving on to the nitty-gritty and what I believe is probably equally, if not equally, more important than the actual camera gear that you use, and that is your audio. As you can see on me, I have the Rode Wireless Go 3s hooked up, and the actual receiver is on, and it stays on that camera unless I'm on my phone, because you can actually move that receiver over to your cell phone. This is perfect for, obviously, when I'm talking to you guys. It's not necessarily going to catch the ambient sounds around you. It's not going to hear the deer coming in. It's not going to hear the squirrels chirping. It's not going to catch any of that. But as far as you, when you're filming, it's going to pick that up, especially, in prime time moment when that deer is walking in and you're trying to either explain to the guy filming you or to, your viewer, and you're whispering and you got to keep your voice real low. It's a lot better about picking those sounds up than, say, a shotgun mic or even the mic that's built into the camera. Now, if that's not in your budget, I will say the Sony ZV-1F and the Sony ZV-E10 both have really, really good internal mics. So does the AX43A. It's got a pretty good internal mic. Sony is actually known for their audio quality before they are their filming quality, and now they're getting to be known for their autofocus quality. So pretty soon Sony's probably going to own the game. So Sony, hey, sponsor me, because I've only been talking about your cameras for the past 30 minutes. But anyways, moving on. On both my main cameras, both my Handycam and my mirrorless, you saw I have the Rode shotgun mic. I prefer to use the non-powered one. I don't necessarily need to control any of my gain or anything in my microphone because my editing software takes care of that for me. Basically, as long as I don't peak my volume, so as long as I don't blast it louder than the actual internals can register, I can edit everything that I need to inside my editing software. So if I'm a little bit too bassy because I'm sick or whatever the case may be, I can get that fixed with inside my editing software, which is super beneficial because I don't have to buy a super expensive mic. I think this mic cost me $80, so I have $160 in both mics for both my cameras, whereas my Wireless Go 3, I believe, is like $300. So you got to be honest with yourself, though, are you going to spend the time to edit your audio? Most people are not. Most people just kind of want it to be, let's go, it's there, it's done, it's good to go, and they just let it ride. Me, I kind of like to nerd out a little bit inside my editing software, so I don't really worry too much with my actual shotgun mic. But regardless, I do keep it on there. There's a couple of different reasons why. If I'm freehanding it, a lot of times you can hear me on the camera. You'll hear my thumb on the plastic. You'll hear the things that are going on inside the camera if I'm using the onboard mic that comes standard with the camera. You can actually, on certain cameras, you can hear the zoom. If you're using the onboard camera, you can hear the computer running. You can hear all sorts of things in the motor going on inside the onboard camera. So I like to get my camera, or excuse me, my microphone away from the camera. That way you can't hear the camera. You can just hear what's going on. And then the other reason is, although both the Sony ZVs, the 1F and the E10, both of them have wind cancellation, you can still catch a little bit of it. And this just kind of helps, you know, with that muff on there, it helps me to be able to eliminate all wind noise. Like the very first Kentucky video, the winds were blowing at 35 miles an hour and you couldn't hear any of them. The only thing that you could tell was the trees were blowing. So it almost made me look like a liar when I was complaining about the wind, which I'm not complaining about. The wind not being there. Still complaining about the wind. That was miserable. So yes, sound, audio is just as important, if not more important than video, especially when you're talking about an activity that is filmed, recorded outside. Things can get, there's no constants, right? Like I can't close the doors and eliminate sound. Like I have to be able to mitigate it. I have to be able to mitigate the wind. And at the same time, I want to hear that deer walking in. It makes your viewer really feel like they were there in that moment. So keep that in mind. All right, if you've stuck with me this far, thank you. It means a lot. If you don't mind, hit that like button, hit subscribe, you know, let me know what you guys are thinking. Leave me a comment down below. But we're going to wrap this video up real quick. The last aspect that I think this video is absolutely different than everyone else is keeping things going while you're in the tree, right? Everybody talks about the camera. Everybody talks about the arm. Nobody talks about the fact that, hey, cameras run on batteries, SD cards. My wireless goes run on batteries. Like, what am I doing to keep batteries going, especially in an all-day sit? So for the longest time, I would just pack spare batteries in my pack, right? I would take my camera, I would set it up on top of my jacket, and then I had a little hard case that I'd put my batteries and SD cards in, and I would slide those down into my pack. And it's all fine and well until you're needing to get something quickly or quietly or anything of that nature. So nowadays, I actually just keep it on me at all times, but I'm also filming everything that I'm doing. So this might not make sense to you, but this honestly might be the ticket for you. Now, this is the Burley Stock Scout, I believe is what the bino harness is called. And obviously I need my binos and my rangefinder every hunt that I go on while I am in archery season. But over here are basically two little accessory pouches. And what I do is in here I keep my spare mic, or the mic, you know, that's going to end up going on whoever I'm filming. I typically walk in with this one on in case I need to real quickly record an interview. And I also carry about 5 spare batteries for the main camera, because I don't, now that it will charge off of USB-C, but that limits me to a wire, and I have a wire floating around with something that I need to move, and that can just turn into a disaster. So I prefer to keep actual spare batteries for my main camera. And then what I do for my GoPro my action camera and my main interview camera is in this pouch on the bottom here. I carry 2 little power banks with a cord, which I actually have that camera plugged up right now with one of them. And what I'll typically do is I use either gear ties or the XOP elastic straps. I don't know what the actual technical name is. Depending on the size of the tree, I'll wrap it around the tree, and I can actually put both of my power banks inside of it and run cords, obviously on separate sides of the tree, and run cords to both the cameras. Or if I've got the GoPro hanging out on a limb, typically what I'll do is I'll put it in like a little pouch and then clip it up inside or hang it off of that mount that it's on. But keep in mind that if you want to get into filming, it's not just the gear that you have to haul as far as the cameras and the mics. You have to carry away to keep batteries going. And if you're, you know, not using a giant SD card, you got to pack SD cards too. There's all sorts of other tips that a lot of other great guys here on YouTube have posted, and hopefully this video will lead you down that route, or maybe one of their videos led you to my page and I kind of filled in the gaps. I don't want to beat, you know, on all the same topics that they beat on. I just kind of wanted to give you a rundown of the cameras that I use, the equipment that I use, the ideas that I have behind why I use the things that I use, and the pros and cons of them, right? The things that I've been successful with on them and the things that I have, you know, failed on, i.e. getting hung up on a tree. That way, hopefully, you can accomplish whatever it is that you want to accomplish with a video camera in your hands while you're in the woods, whether that's filming for your buddy, filming for yourself, or making a production video for the world to see. Regardless, I hope you got something good out of it. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. And until next time, see you on the hill.